right, well, we're at noon. I think we can go ahead and get started and people can trickle in as they come. Mace, if you don't mind letting people in from the waiting room as they come in, that would be great.
You get
Um,
it.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Christian Folk. I'm the Assistant Director of Research with the Strategic National Arts Alumni Project, or SNAP. Super excited to have you all here for our next SNAAPChat. We're pretty well into our SNAAPChat series. I believe this is the eighth one that we've done. And we're excited to bring you some more data and some more presentations about our work. So like I said, my name's Christian Folk. I'm with SNAP. And I will pass it off to some of our other presenters to introduce themselves. I'll go to Nathan.
Yes, hi everyone. Nice to see and meet many of you. I'm Nathan Martin. I'm a sociologist and an associate professor at Arizona State University's School of Social and Family Dynamics.
And I am Angie Miller. I am a senior research scientist at the Indiana University Center for Post-Secondary Research. And I have been involved with SNAP since 2009. Right now, technically, I think my title is senior scholar, but I've been involved in report production and data collection and a lot of different things over the years. So I am happy to be here and help present some of the most recent data analysis that we've been working on.
Hi, and I'm Tim Dowd. I'm a professor of sociology at Emory University in Atlanta, and I'm also on my second year of being on the board of directors for the SNAP project, and it's my great honor to be working with my colleagues on this report that we will be sharing with you today.
Awesome. So I'm going to share and then we'll get started. So today we're going to be talking about our kind of most recent analysis and reports that have come out of SNAP on Arts and Design Alumni sense of belonging. So these were some items that we included on the 2022 SNAP survey, and we'll get into all that soon during the presentation. So just kind of a quick breakdown of the presentation today. So we're kind of starting at the very top view level of what Arts and Design Alumni are reporting about sense of belonging. We're going to talk about belonging gaps across identity groups, so across demographic groups like race and gender. And then we'll get into our second sense of belonging report, which is on predictors of sense of belonging among arts and design alumni. And then we'll end with some kind of institutional recommendations that institutions can take to strengthen belonging amongst their arts and design alumni and students. So we have two reports. One was actually just published on our website. The first one has been up for a couple months now. So report one, we just did some descriptive statistics about what alumni experienced in terms of sense of belonging. So we go over all of the sense of belonging items. We talk about some gaps between demographic groups. And then we just put out a second report, which is us looking at what predicts stronger belonging. So different factors like race, cohort, various other types of demographic groups that and experiences in the institution that can predict if a student will have stronger sense of belonging. Shared focus between the two concepts like respect, value, fair treatment, accessibility, diversity, and community engagement. And our core question in doing this analysis and including those items on our survey is how can institutions move from just inclusion to a broader sense of belonging among students? So I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Angie.
Yeah, so thinking about belonging both in the context of higher education and in the context of arts and design education. So when we talk about belonging, we're talking about meaning, feeling accepted, respected, valued, and supported. And this has actually been something that has been increasingly popular over probably the past 2 decades in higher education research because it's really connected to other positive outcomes. So it's connected to things like retention, it's connected to things like graduation rate. So there's all these positive outcomes, and it's also connected for alumni to things like, are they more willing to donate to their schools? Are they more willing to volunteer? So it has a sort of a broad array of positive outcomes. And so in higher ed, they've been really looking into sort of seeing, well, how can we increase this for everyone? Because it is an important component of the educational experience. And then thinking about it particularly in arts and design. So these students, a lot of times their work is tied to their identity and their lived experience. So they are sort of in a more vulnerable position when they're sharing it. There's a lot of sort of themselves that come out within the coursework and the different experiences that they're having while they're at their institution. So, things like critiques and performances and studio work and portfolios, all of those things can actually affirm belonging because it gives students this sort of shared experience, and it gives them a sense of community with each other. And they're sort of, going through these really vulnerable but important learning experiences together. But on the other hand, these same types of spaces can also heighten exclusion if students are already feeling like they don't belong. Having to engage in these kinds of experiences can amplify negative experiences in addition to just sort of amplifying positive experiences. So that's really what one aspect of why it's important to look at it for the art and design alumni in particular. So for this analysis, we used the 2022 SNAAP survey. For this, we really just focused on undergraduate arts and design alumni because undergraduate and graduate, they do have some different experiences when it comes to not just the curriculum, but also the kind of social aspects of that. We separated it out. We also just looked at alumni age 64 or younger, so those sort of more recent alumni, and then also, excuse me, looking at the more recent ones, it's sort of looking at their remembered educational experiences. So we are asking them to reflect back on what their experience was like while they were at their institution. So narrowing it down, we had about 20,000 alumni at 100 different institutions that we included in this particular analysis. And the focus for these sense of belonging items. So we asked them to report how often they felt respected by faculty and by classmates, how much they felt valued, faculty and classmates, and then also treated differently in a negative way. So these last two items are sort of the inverse of that is belonging. So you don't want to feel treated differently in a negative way. And then, of course, you can see that there's the faculty component and the classmates component. So all of these items are what we are sort of using to measure sense of belonging. And I will point out that in 2022, when we included these items on the survey for the first time, we were doing it sort of as something that institutions were really interested in. Institutions had asked us sort of, what about belonging? And it was not necessarily seen as controversial. Right now, belonging has become something that you have to take out of your grant applications, and you have to sort of worry about its connection to DEI. But in 2022, these were not controversial items. These were actually really popular things that institutions wanted us to include. So I'll just sort of flag that there's kind of been a shift in how sense of belonging is being perceived and treated by sort of federal administration, also depending on what state you're in, state administrations. So anyway, that's sort of what we're talking about when we talk about belonging in the context of SNAAP.
Awesome. Thanks, Angie. And One quick note about the items on the survey, we also ask questions about their belonging at their current careers. We get into that some in the first report. We just don't have it in the presentation today, but if that's something you're interested in, we also ask about belonging at work. And I forgot to mention at the top, if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat as we go along. That way we can either answer them in the chat or once we get done with the presentation. So getting into some of the findings from the first report. Again, these are just kind of some descriptive statistics, and then we'll get into some more detail later on in the presentation. Overall, respect is pretty widespread amongst arts and design alumni. About 63% said that they often felt respected by faculty. This is on a scale of 1 to 4, with often being the highest on the scale. About 7 and 10 often felt respected by classmates, and about 9 and 10 sometimes or often felt respected and valued by instructors. Faculty relationships remain a really major foundation of belonging. So, as Angie was mentioning, there's this kind of culture of critique and studio classes and ensembles and various other unique experiences that are tied to identity in arts curricula. And so faculty relationships, the folks who are leading those spaces, really help maintain that foundation of belonging amongst the students. But at the same time, it's uneven. So these are getting into some of the demographic results that we thought were really interesting. Overall, non-binary alumni reported lower faculty respect than those who identified as men and women. There were also some racial differences that appeared pretty prominently in reports of faculty respect. So, white and Latina alumni reported higher faculty respect, while Asian, Black, and multiracial alumni reported lower rates of faculty respect. So these are just some of the figures that we have in the report. As you can see, those who identified as non-binary were more likely to say that they never or rarely felt respect compared to those who identified as men and women. And then the same thing for the race categories. So Asian, Black, and multiracial alumni were less likely to say that they sometimes or often felt respect compared to other races. So peer culture is also something that matters when we think about a sense of belonging. Peer relationships were more uneven than faculty relationships. And again, this can be a direct effect from the kind of critique culture in studio classes and ensembles where there could be seen as like some competition between peers. So about 1 in 5 alumni reported negative differential treatment by classmates, so that they said that they were treated differently by their classmates. Again, non-binary alumni were especially likely to report peer differential treatment, and Black alumni reported the highest levels of negative peer treatment by race. There's also some evidence of conditional belonging in the results that we found. So some alumni described environments that were polite but not fully inclusive. So kind of performative belonging. Students could generally feel respected while still feeling unseen, and these were seen in the open-ended comments that we asked students about their experiences in their institutions. Um, so belonging really just depended on the dominant program norms and what is typical of the institution and the curricula that they are experiencing. So this is a quote from an alumni that we included in our report. This is in one of their open-ended comments. They wrote, as a minority in my classes, I never had the opportunity to learn under an African American professor. Sometimes I felt pressured to make work about my racial experience or that I was wasting my time by being interested in things outside of that experience. So this is an individual who is experiencing this conditional belonging where they thought that the only part of their identity that mattered was race and that they were feeling pressured to make work about their racial experience by their professor. And then we also asked questions about diversity related curriculum experiences. So we asked questions about if alumni learned about creative works from different cultures, if they learned from faculty of diverse identities, if they studied practices from different cultures than their own, if they looked at topics like racial justice and social equity. Um, and there were some others that aren't included on this slide as well that you can see in the full report. So about 40% said that they often learned about creative works from diverse cultures. Again, that's on a scale of 1 to 4. About 1/3 often learned from faculty of diverse identities. Fewer than 1/3 studied artistic practices from cultures different from their own, and kind of surprising to me at least was over half said that they at least occasionally engage with racial justice or social equity. And like Angie mentioned, this was in 2022 when these topics were a bit more prescient and salient in the university curriculum and not as controversial. So we imagine when we run the survey again in 2027, these results might be a bit different. So I'm going to pass it off to Nathan Martin, who's going to talk about our second sense of belonging report.
Thank you. Again, report one documents alumni experiences, and report two now is identifying predictors of a stronger sense of belonging, with the goal of identifying what happens most and what matters most in areas where institutions can act. So as Angie described, we draw on a sample from more than 20,000 undergraduate arts alumni from 109 different post-secondary institutions. And for this analysis, we measure sense of belonging by constructing a scale that averages the responses to the 6 survey items that assess how often alumni felt respected, valued, or treated fairly by instructors, faculty, and classmates. And to help identify which factor is more strongly related to sense of belonging, we use random effects regression models to assess for the relative influence and to adjust for clustering by post-secondary institution. So highlighting some of our main results for the second report, we find that alumni's family and sociodemographic background still matter, even when controlling for other factors in the regression analysis. So echoing patterns that Christian highlighted for our first report, we find that in general, alumni from more advantaged backgrounds are more likely to report a strong sense of belonging. So holding other variables constant, there are significantly higher levels of sense of belonging among white alumni compared to non-white alumni, cisgender versus non-binary alumni, among alumni with at least one college graduate parent, and among alumni who did not take out any loans for college. So in this way, our patterns reflect broader social inequities, and we see how these in turn are reflected in the college experience and echo the elitist and exclusionary origins of U.S. post-secondary education, with students from advantaged backgrounds feeling more strongly that they belong on campus. In contrast, overall, our analysis shows that institutional characteristics and program of study are only weakly associated with sense of belonging. In terms of where we see variation and how strongly students feel they belong on campus, it's not in terms of institutional type or program of study. So we see some subtle differences in terms of type of institution and size. So alumni from schools with large enrollments report still significantly stronger sense of belonging. But then we have a rather weaker and less consistent pattern by major field that's largely mediated by in-college activities. What's more important is the resources and opportunities for deep engagement and experiential learning. So compared to institutional and background characteristics, in college activities and experiences are stronger predictors of sense of belonging. In particular, alumni who were involved in high impact practices, such as working on community projects, completing a portfolio, completing an internship or apprenticeship, reported a significantly stronger sense of belonging. This way, our analysis further document the benefits of high impact practices for alumni identity and social capital development for post-graduation. Namely, community projects help connect creative work to public purpose, portfolios can help students synthesize creative identity, and internships and apprenticeships help build professional networks. But of all the variables we were able to include in our analysis, Uh, the strongest association with sense of belonging was found with a scale measuring campus diversity experiences, which we constructed by combining responses to these five survey items that were first introduced in the 2022 SNAAP survey. Uh, so in quantifying the relative size of associations, our analysis finds that the adjusted difference, for example, between white and non-white alumni is about 1/8 of a standard deviation on the sense of belonging scale. We see a slightly smaller gap, about 1/12 of a standard deviation, when we compare alumni who did or do not complete an internship or who did or do not take out student loans. Some of the strongest predictors of sense of belonging among the background and college activity factors we considered. In comparison, a comparable change in experience, diversity engagement or experiences is associated with more than a 1/4 of a standard deviation increase. So from 2 to 3 times larger of an impact from moving from average to high levels of diversity experience. So a much stronger association than with the other factors. Furthermore, while more frequent campus diversity experiences predict stronger sense of belonging for alumni of all racial ethnic backgrounds, the positive association is significantly stronger for non-white alumni. So we find a significant race by diversity interaction. So at low levels of diversity experience, white alumni report significantly greater sense of belonging in comparison to Black, Latino, and Asian alumni. But we do not see a significant difference by racial ethnic group at high levels of diversity experience. So greater engagement with diversity associated with a stronger sense of belonging for students of all backgrounds, but especially so for alumni, non-white alumni. And kind of finally, a report highlights some findings in terms of the impact of sense of belonging. So this belonging is both a student experience issue and, as Christian introduced, an alumni relationship issue. And sense of belonging stands out as the strongest predictor of institutional satisfaction of all the variables we were able to consider in our analysis. So we find that a stronger sense of belonging predicts stronger feelings of connection to the institution, higher satisfaction with college experiences and opportunities, and a greater likelihood of recommending the institution to others. So these findings underscore the importance for post-secondary institutions to create campus learning and social environments that promote a greater sense of belonging for all students. And to take it home, I'll pass it on to the colleague Tim.
Thank you very much. And so we started this presentation with the question of what matters and what matters most for a sense of belonging among arts and design alumni, and also paired that with the question of what can institutions do. And as you can hear by the results, is that one of the things that's exciting is that it shows that colleges and universities and other institutions of higher education can indeed have an impact on the sense of belonging. And one of the ways to do that is to think about the curriculum itself and to diversify the curriculum in terms of moving beyond the typical artistic canons, for instance, and dealing with histories that are more than the usual suspects, but also having students participate and create in cultural traditions that are different than their own. So, and also there's an important aspect of for arts and design students in particular, that given that what they share with others as part of the curriculum is often highly personal. It's an extension of their own creativity. And as especially found in the first report, is that a sense of belonging can be helped by making sure when such sharing occurs is that the type of critique, feedback, and also the way that it occurs within various measures is done in a respectful and respectful fashion, but also in a way that sees and hears the students and what they bring to to the curriculum. But it's also important to realize that some of the things that we've long emphasized in higher education, such as internships, apprenticeships, working on community projects, are very important. But one of the things that our report emphasizes is that not only offering these as part of the curriculum is important, but also making sure that students have access to those programs. Excuse me. In particular, when you think about first generation students or students who have to take out loans, there may be financial barriers that make them less likely to be able to participate in these things. So for designers of curricula, and as well as administrators, the types of programs that can increase accessibility would be very valuable. And so that's what we mean, build accessibility into the curriculum and into the higher education program itself. And also is that there's a tendency to think of belonging as when individuals either feel like they belong or they do not. And it can be very tempting to treat that as more of a personality issue or a disposition. But one of the strengths of research on this topic, including our topic, is that it's also something that institutions can foster belonging independent of the students that are not only independent of the students that are involved, but in conjunction and in tandem with their experiences. So there's a lot that institutions can do that action that can be taken on the base of these findings from the two reports. So we would like to emphasize these key takeaways is that one of the things that is impressive about the results coming from 20,000 plus students at over 100 institutions are that many of them have a sense of belonging at their undergraduate institutions. And so belonging is not an uncommon outcome, but we should also emphasize that the sense of belonging is not evenly distributed. We see, for instance, racial ethnic variation as well as economic background variation. Students from advantaged households tend to feel a higher sense of belonging than students from other households. But we also see that the relationships that the students have, not only with their peers, but their faculty, matter in terms of feeling that they belong to their institution, as is accessibility to important programmatic elements such as internships and apprenticeships. And as a professor, I'm very pleased to see that some of the assignments that we make can actually have an impact on students feeling a sense of belonging, including projects that deal with issues of equity, deal with inclusion, and deal with linkages to the community. Also, we want to emphasize that diversity students of undergraduates matter. So it's important to be exposed to a diverse curriculum as well as to a diverse faculty. But also, one of the things that's encouraging is that visiting professionals and guest lecturers, for instance, who bring a diversity to the curriculum are also important. So there's some short-term and some long-term steps that can be taken. And as a result, we emphasize that institutions can, through curricular, programmatic, and through even hiring approaches, can create stronger for conditions of belonging among their undergraduate students in the arts and design. And so, in closing, we would want to emphasize that belonging is not simply a feeling that students bring with them into the campus in their first year and in the years thereafter, but it is also something that is shaped by the curricular and the co-curricular and extracurricular environment in which they find themselves, an environment that includes faculty, instructors, visiting professionals, and especially their peers. So curriculum, pedagogy, critique culture, accessibility, mentorship, community engagement, professional preparation. That's the list of things that institutions can take direct and measurable steps on. And knowing that all of them help students develop a higher sense of belonging, uh, which is desirable because it tells us that the students feel valued, they feel supported, they feel respected. And for those of our administrators in the alumni and giving offices, the more belonging they feel, the more they remain attached to their undergraduate institutions.
Awesome.
So we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to this report and as we share the findings. And so we'd like to open it up for questions. And we also in the chat we've established a link for the sense of belonging report. The second one, which is newly available, and the first one, which has been available for a little bit. So thank you very much on behalf of my colleagues.
Thanks, Tim. Um, as you'll see, there's two QR codes here. We recently launched our Arts Alumni Data Hub, which is a series of Tableau dashboards that show various items that we included on the 2022 SNAAP survey that you can manipulate by demographics and other factors. So if that is of interest to you, that is linked there, and we'll also put it in the chat. And then the second QR code is to the first Sense of Belonging report, which is also in the chat. So I'm going to stop sharing and we can answer any questions that anyone might have. Any questions?
And you can, if someone wants to ask, you don't have to type it out in the chat. It's a small enough group. I think you can just turn on your audio
Yep.
and ask. Alex.
Hi there. Thank you. This is really fascinating information. I'm still processing it, but I want to go back to one of the kind of what I see as an overarching interesting finding here that about the type of organization, type of institution. Did I hear it correctly that so larger organizations, larger alumni from larger schools, I guess higher enrollment, are more likely to say that they feel a sense of belonging? Was that correct? And can we unpack that some more? Because this sounds
Yeah,
interesting.
that's
Okay.
correct, Nathan, but it was also there was a Carnegie classification
Yeah.
trend happening too.
Yeah, so it's adjusting for all other factors. So on average, holding institutional type constant, we have slightly stronger sense of belonging among very large institutions compared to schools with an enrollment less than 10,000. But also on average, doctoral institutions have slightly less sense of belonging on average than like master's or baccalaureate institutions. Compared to the demographics and especially like kind of the campus involvement engagement factors, it's a relatively small association. And so we don't identify that as what matters most, but we do see subtle differences by type of institution, but not in a very clear way.
Alex, one way that I think of it is that we do have research that at least among smaller elite universities, that they're very good at developing a sense of camaraderie among their students. But at the same time, if you don't if you feel a little bit left out, there's not many other alternatives for you at a smaller, tightly knit place. Whereas there's also some research that's been done on large institutions, as you know, that shows that there are a variety of avenues by which people can establish a place within a large university, not only curricularly but extracurricularly. And so I like to think of it as, you know, a little bit more of the a Zimmel type of argument that it's easier to find your own folks in a large place than in a small place with less variety of folks or less variety of cliques, I would say.
That's
Yeah,
helpful.
I would maybe add something too about like sort of thinking about like resource allocation. Like the larger institutions might have a larger faculty, so they would be more, representative of different people of different demographic backgrounds. And then also they might, have more sort of options for performances and options for like the extracurricular participation Tim was talking about. So it could be more of like an access to resources thing that's showing up. But yeah, that's kind of speculative.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. No, this is really interesting. Thank you. And the only thing I was going to add to that is just that, yeah, it seemed like a bit of a paradox, which I think you've all explained well. Um, and I appreciate the reference to Zimmel. Always a great webinar when there's a Zimmel reference. But but also the association with high impact practices is interesting because this fits with this idea that students don't necessarily need to feel like they must belong in every aspect of their institutional life, as long as there's some kind of association somewhere, which could be, working with community, right? So it doesn't have to necessarily be housed within. So really fascinating. Thank you.
Thanks. Lily put a question in the chat, which I think would be a good one for Nathan or Angie.
Yes, so we in general we find that kind of older alumni, so those graduated longer ago, report greater satisfaction, slightly higher sense of belonging than more recent graduates, younger alumni. This is a pattern that we're finding in like public attitude and opinion surveys of college students and the broader population that like Generation Z expresses more dissatisfaction through surveys than older generations. I think there's also just on how our survey was administered, kind of a selection bias. So for an older graduate to still respond to the invitation from their institution and fill out the survey, um, things may have worked out more to their liking than a more recent graduate who are graduating in a quite tumultuous, difficult time as well. So short answer is, yeah, on average, this is something we have in our model. More recent graduates are reporting uh, a, a lower sense of belonging.
That
Yeah,
doesn't
we
surprise
we
me. Oh, sorry.
oh, I was just gonna add, so like not specifically related to sense of belonging, but in general, we have more respondents from the newer cohorts,
Yeah.
but we have higher response rates from the older cohorts, which is, if you think about like, well, if you graduated in like the 90s, you have to like go to trouble to make sure that your institution can contact you. So those people have like kept up over the years with their institutions. So those people are sort of usually more likely to be a little like feel a little more fondly about their institutions and then to respond to a request to take a survey from them. Whereas it's a lot easier to find the newer cohorts of folks because they just providing an email address is not a weird thing to do. It's a very common thing to do. So just sort of in general, the numbers are larger for the newer cohorts, but the response rates are higher for the older cohorts. But as Nathan says, that is why it's important to put that in the model, is because we know that there's differences sort of across the groups.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Any other questions before we wrap up? Great. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to my colleagues for presenting, and we will see you at the next SNAAPChat, which should be in July.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.